Hello there. I'm Alex, and I sell cheese for a living. As a cheese monger and certified cheese professional, I have helped thousands of customers find their favorite cheese. Each episode, I'll share what I've learned from behind the counter as we dive into the vast, fascinating world of all things cheese. Today, we're talking about one of the biggest events in the cheese world, something that only happens every 2 years, but when it does, the entire dairy industry shows up. Today, we talk about the World Championship Cheese Contest, which just wrapped up in Madison, Wisconsin. We are going to talk about the history of the competition, how the judging actually works behind the scenes, what kinds of cheeses compete, and a quick breakdown of the winners from this 2026 contest. Let's begin. The World Championship Cheese Contest is one of the most prestigious dairy competitions on the planet. It's hosted by the Wisconsin Cheesemakers Association, and it takes place every 2 years in Madison, Wisconsin. And this isn't just a contest all about cheese. It also includes butter, yogurt, cultured dairy products, and even some dry dairy ingredients. The 2026 competition brought together 3,375 entries from 25 countries and 34 U.S. states, all competing across nearly 150 different product classes. Think of it like the Olympics for dairy. You're going to have cheesemakers from Switzerland, the Netherlands, the United States, Italy, France, and many, many more countries. And they all send their best products to be evaluated by a panel of international judges. And unlike consumer awards or popularity contests, this one is very, very technical. Every cheese is judged for specific structural and sensory qualities. It is mostly about the precision, not all the time about the flavor. What does a perfect cheese look like, or as close to perfect as you can get? The World Championship Cheese Contest has deep roots in American dairy culture. The event first began in 1957, and it was created by the Wisconsin Cheesemakers Association, kind of as a way to showcase the skill of cheesemakers and elevate the craft of the dairy production. Wisconsin, of course, was a natural home for it. The state produces more than 600 varieties of cheese, and the cheese-making tradition there stretches back over a century. Originally, the contest was a much smaller event focused mostly on domestic producers, but over time, it evolved into a truly international competition. Today, cheesemakers from across Europe, North America, they all compete for medals and recognition. And winning here can really impact your company or your cheese brand. A medal at the World Championship Cheese Contest can, all at the same time, it can boost a creamery's reputation. It could dramatically increase the demand for the cheese. Once people get the list out of all the winners, a lot of people will seek out those cheeses to try them, and that would increase the demand of the product. It will also put a relatively unknown cheese onto the global stage if they win. Small producer who places, first, second, or third in their category, some cheeses that win at the contest suddenly start showing up in specialty shops around the world. And for cheesemakers, it is a career milestone. If you can place at the awards, that is incredible. If you can place multiple times, multiple years in the same category, ridiculous. Good on you. So how do people actually judge these thousands of cheeses? Well, the contest relies heavily on a panel of expert technical judges from around the world. And just a quick look at some of these judges. When I counted, I believe there was about 56 or 57 judges. So it's quite a few people all trying to do the same thing, figure out the best cheeses that they have been presented with. And these people come from all over the world. I mean, we have some that are from, Idaho, Italy, the Netherlands, Oregon, Vermont, Wisconsin, of course, Ukraine, New Jersey, Brazil, Illinois, Australia, Washington, Ireland, Croatia, Germany, Mexico, Canada, France, California, South Dakota, the UK, Japan, Denmark, Puerto Rico, Spain, Portugal, Switzerland, Greece, New Zealand, Texas, Ecuador, Missouri. So many different backgrounds in cheese judging, and each one of them have 20 to 30 years plus of doing good quality work in this field. Most of them have gone on to create better procedures or cheese making practices. Most of them have been cheesemakers or have helped cheesemakers, and a good chunk of them have some nice, doctorates in food science or have written books on the science of food. So these people don't mess around. And when you put a piece of cheese in front of them, they are going to break it down as much as they can. Some of the attributes that they look for in the judging process would be based on technical or sensory, and it would include flavor, body, texture, salt, color, finish, packaging, and more. In other words, the cheesemakers who submit their product to be evaluated aren't just trying to make something delicious. They're trying to make something technically flawless. Judging happens in small groups, with each table focusing on a particular category of cheese. One judge will often use a cheese trier, a tool that looks a bit kind of like a corkscrew, but it is used to pull a core sample from any cheese wheel or block. The judges will smell it, feel it, examine the paste, and then they will taste it. They'll try it. They talk about the defects, the texture issues, if any, or flavor imbalances, and score accordingly. The highest scoring cheeses in each category receive gold, silver, and bronze. And from the top scoring cheeses overall, the contest determines the world champion. Sometimes, the difference between first and second place is 100th of a point. Now that we kind of have an understanding of what the competition is, or what the contest is, let's talk about the big news from this year's competition. Who won? The 2026 World Champion cheese was Beemster Royale Grand Cru, made by cask makers in the Netherlands. The cheese scored an impressive 98.68 out of 100, beating thousands of entries to take the top prize. The first runner-up was an Appenzeller Purple Label at a score of 4.5, and the second runner-up was an Alter Fritz scoring 98.41. So the winner was from Netherlands, and the first runner-up and second runner-up were both from Switzerland. And I believe there's some 150 different classes of cheese, some of them which would be washed rind, smear ripened hard cheeses, mature, less than 9 months. These get fairly specific in order to group all the thousands of cheeses. One is simply labeled Gruyere. One is Appenzeller Young, Appenzeller Aged. One is Gouda flavored. One is Gouda smoked. One is simply Brie. One is Camembert. And then you're going to have a lot of open classes, like open class pepper flavored cheese medium heat, or open class pepper flavored cheese high heat. You also can have open class semi-soft cheeses flavored. So no matter what cheese exists out there, there is going to be a category for it to be judged against its fellow competitors. You'll even have some stuff like category of dry whey, category whey protein isolate 90, or whey protein isolate acidified, or non-fat dry milk and skim milk powder. Everything gets a grade. Everything gets judged in the dairy world here. Now, back to the winner. The Grand Cru from the Beemster is a long-aged Dutch cow's milk cheese, mostly known for its deep caramel notes, firm crystalline texture, and a rich nutty flavor. Now, all that said, Europe did pretty well this year with, again, the first, second, and third all being from Europe, but American producers still had an enormous presence here. The United States, specifically Wisconsin, captured the highest number of class wins overall, with dozens of gold medals across different categories. Some of the category wins would be the category of cheddar, the category mozzarella, feta, of goat cheeses, and flavored specialty cheeses. In fact, Wisconsin producers alone earned more than 100 total awards across the contest, which isn't surprising, really, because the sheer scale of dairy production that exists there is hard to compete with. Beyond the overall champion, one of the most interesting parts of the World Championship cheese contest is seeing which cheeses make it deep into the competition. Of more than the 3,300 entries, judges eventually narrow the field to just 20 finalist cheeses before selecting the champion. And that list often includes some really interesting producers and styles. Here are a few notable cheeses that appeared in the 2026 competition that cheesemongers and cheeseheads might want to keep an eye on. One interesting finalist was the Flagship Reserve, made by Beecher's Handmade Cheese in Seattle. I don't know if it's really that interesting. Flagship Reserve is an amazing cheese, and they absolutely deserve to be here. If you've ever visited Pike Place Market, you might know Beecher's for their famous mac and cheese, but their Flagship Reserve is a serious cloth bound style cheddar. It's aged longer than their standard flagship, and it develops a dense, crumbly texture with savory, almost brothy flavors. Seeing a cheddar from the Pacific Northwest in the finalist pool is a reminder that American cheese making has become incredibly competitive on the global stage. Another notable entry in the finalist group was Emmentaler AOP from Switzerland. Traditional Alpine cheeses like Emmentaler continue to perform extremely well in technical competitions like this. These cheeses require enormous wheels, long aging times, and very controlled fermentation to develop their signature texture and those iconic eyes. When they're made well, they tend to score extremely high in technical judging because the margin for defects is just so small. There were also showings from American producers across multiple categories. Some more categories that include wins from Wisconsin would be cheddar, mozzarella, Monterey Jack, flavored cheeses, goat milk cheeses, and specialty washed rind cheeses. Another producer that frequently shows up in the results of competitions like this is Cypress Grove in California. They are famous for goat cheeses like Humboldt Fog, and soft ripened goat cheeses tend to perform well in their class because they highlight very precise ripening and textural control. And that really highlights something important about the World Championship Cheese Contest, that it isn't just about the one best cheese. It's about hundreds of individual competitions happening simultaneously across styles that range from fresh chev to 36-month Alpine wheels. So while one cheese takes the overall championship, the real story is the diversity of cheese making happening around the world. And you might be wondering, why does a competition like this even matter? Well, for cheesemakers, these contests do several things. First, they set technical standards. When judges evaluate cheese this rigorously, it helps establish benchmarks for quality. So, if you can aim for a score, aim for a grade to hit those benchmarks, you're going to just be making better cheese all the time. And I don't know too many people who don't want their cheese to be more consistent and more flavorful throughout the year. And trying to hit those benchmarks is a good way to get there. Second, they celebrate the craft of cheese making. Cheese is one of the oldest foods humans make, but competitions like this show that it's still evolving. New techniques, new milk sources, and new aging approaches are constantly being tested. And finally, these contests help consumers discover incredible cheeses they might have never tried otherwise. Many cheeses that win awards here suddenly appear in specialty shops and cheese counters around the world. So the ripple effect goes far beyond Madison, and I can attest to that. I remember a few years ago, there was a specific cheddar from Wisconsin that placed first in their category. And I think they even placed second in their category because from the same cheese plant, two different cheesemakers had submitted a cheese and they each won first and second place in that specific cheddar category. And I remember thinking, if you submit two different wheels of cheese from the same plant and they are blind judged by, again, 56, 57 judges, and both of those wheels come out first and second place, good Lord, I have to try that cheese. It sounds like they're doing a great job. And there are over 3,000 cheeses that were entered this year. And of the 150 categories, there are three winners from each category, coming out to just under 500 winners. And that means there's 500 cheeses that if you don't know what it is, you might want to go find out and try it because it scored exceptionally well. So that was a quick look inside the World Championship Cheese Contest from this year, a competition that started in Wisconsin nearly 70 years ago, and it's grown into one of the most important events in the global cheese world. And I should say, if I haven't already, this isn't the only cheese contest in the world. There are dozens of various cheese grading competitions like this. Some are more prestigious than others. Some are just about pizza cheese. Those probably will not get as much news. But in a future episode, I'll try to break down every major cheese contest throughout the world and which ones you might want to be paying a little more attention to as they come around, either annually or biannually, because you never know who is going to place that year. But from this year, there were thousands of cheeses, dozens of countries, and a judging process that came down to a fraction of a point. And this year, again, the world champion cheese goes to the Netherlands with Beemster Royale Grand Cru. Congratulations. Thank you for listening to this episode of what an incredible World Championship Cheese Contest breakdown can be. I'm excited to do the next one in another 2 years and to do more episodes like this based on the current events in the cheese world. Thank you for listening. My name is Alex, and this has been The Modern Monger.